Yes,
Hello.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
So the Director General, International Solar Alliance will be giving his keynote address, and after which we will have our webinar session. Discussion. Followed by that, we'll have a question and answer session. So we will also have a question and answer. In between, we will have poll questions to get the perspective of the participant also. So we have in this webinar Mr. Jatindranath Swain, who is the CMD of SECI, Mr. Anil Srivastava, Principal Consultant and Vision Director for the Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage, EIM, Mr. Sai Baba Puri, who is the CEO of Vikram Solar, Mr. Pranav Mehta, Chairman of the National Solar Energy Federation of India, Mr. Dilip Nigam, who is advisor to MNRE, and Mrs. Chandrima Sinha, VP Invest India. So it is now my pleasure to introduce to our distinguished moderator, Mr. Srinivasa Murthy, IAS retired. Mr. Murthy has served as the chairman of the 6th Pay Commission of Karnataka, and as you all know, he was the chairman of the Karnataka Electricity Regulation Commission. He has held various important positions in the government of India and also in the government of Karnataka. He was the additional chief secretary, finance department, commissioner of Bangalore City Corporation, principal secretary, election commission of India, and controller, ISRO satellite center. So it's with great pleasure I welcome Mr. Srinivasa Murthy to deliver his opening remarks and moderate the session. Over to you, Mr. Murthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Good morning, friends. Um, it's indeed a pleasure to join all of you on this webinar in this very interesting or trying situation. And I am, as was mentioned, I am Srinivas Murthy, formerly in the Karnataka Electricity Regulatory Commission between 2010 and 2015. I must say that was an exciting period because at that time we had something like 3 megawatts of solar PV in the whole country in some tiny place in Karnataka state. From there we have come a long way. At last count, I think we had something like 87,000 megawatts of renewable energy installed capacity, out of which nearly 34 or 35,000 megawatts of solar, another 36,000 plus megawatts of wind and other sources. Now, many states have done extremely well. The country as a whole, we have done extremely well during the last 10 years in pursuing different sources of renewable energy. And I must say, in 2009, we were aiming at a modest capacity of 20,000 megawatts by 2022, according to our, solar mission statement at that time. Now we have revised that to 175,000 megawatts of renewable energy capacity, including 100 megawatts of solar and 75,000 megawatts of other sources. We are somewhere midway in reaching this target. We have covered a lot of ground. We still have a lot of ground to cover. Now, we have in between, we have had this black swan event of COVID-19 striking the whole world and bringing to a halt most economic activity in virtually every country in the world. Now, the whole world is now thinking about how to transition from this very difficult situation to a new normal, because nobody expects the old normal to return anytime soon. How to return to a new normal is the question. Now, naturally, even those who are in the sector of renewable energy also have to worry about how to transition to the new normal. I'm very happy that we have a very distinguished set of participants here, panelists. I can see Upendra. Good morning, Upendra.
Yes, sir.
Good
Morning, sir.
How are you? Mr. Upendra.
Such a pleasure to see you.
Director General of International Solar Alliance, And we have other friends like Mr. Jatin Nath Swain, CMD of Solar Energy Corporation of India, and then Mr. Anil Srivastava, Mr. Sai Baba of Vikram Solar, Mr. Srivastava from Niti Aayog, and Mr. Pranav Mehta from NACFI, Mr. Dilip Nigam, also MNRE advisor, and Ms. Chandrima Sinha, Vice President of Invest India. Now, I would just mention a couple of issues before I invite Mr. Upendra Tripathi, who I am told has to leave for another commitment somewhere else. Now, the immediate situation also has created some problems for the sector. One of the problems is the difficulty in obtaining payments from the discoms, and that has affected the liquidity of many of the developers here. And they in turn probably will have to postpone some of the payments due to the financial institutions. Then there is this problem of, whether after this kind of a downturn or slowdown in the economy, are we going to have normal situation restored so far as availability of project funding is concerned? That's a medium-term concern, if not exactly long-term. And that will greatly impact upon the speed with which we can pursue our targets for development of renewable energy. Then also there is this problem of what will be the situation of distribution companies who are the main people sustaining the whole thing by their payments. Now, whether they will be able to honor all the payments for the developers and suppliers of renewable energy. These are some of the immediate problems that we have. In the long run, of course, we have things which we have always had, like issues like the tendering procedure that has come in has, I'm told, virtually eliminated small players from both wind energy and solar. Gone are the days when we used to have feed-in tariff, and anybody who could put together investment for even 3, 4, 5 megawatts of generation could go ahead and install the capacity and then go to a discom asking them to buy the power. That system is now gone. Now, thanks to the SECI tenders, it is mainly the field open for the very large players. Then the feed-in tariff system is virtually moribund except for those tariffs which have already been approved. And even there are concerns that some states, some discoms would like some renegotiation in the light of the lower tariffs discovered in the SECI tenders. These are some of the major problems that we have. Then there are problems of payment security issues. Then there are 1 or 2 states are having problems regarding curtailment or backing down of the capacity. And there are also other issues like manufacturing of equipment in India, because we are mostly dependent upon other countries for supplying not only components but even panels. Now, in the new situation, when everybody is trying to, look inward, whether we will continue to source all these panels and components, etc., from other countries, or should we aggressively develop capacity within this? And what are going to be the policies to address all these issues? And what's going to be the role of course, Government of India's policies are mentioned here. What will be the role of regulators and state governments? These are some of the concerns. Now we will discuss each one of them with the help of experts who have joined us here. Now it's my pleasure first to invite my dear friend and former colleague, should I call you present colleague?
Yes, sir.
Upendra,
You can.
Upendra Tripathi, Director General of International Solar Alliance. Upendra, so good to see you. Please, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. The chair, in fact, my friend, philosopher, and guide, if I can repeat it.
Oh.
And all the friends in the panel, in fact.
You're embarrassing me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very, very, very close friends in the panel. I have worked with most of them. This morning, in fact, I was talking to a friend, a journalist friend, saying, "What are you doing?" He said he's writing an article on haircuts. He calls it COVID haircut. Well, I said, look, I haven't taken a haircut for some time. And he was listing out some 16 types of response of individuals in the society to the haircut during the COVID crisis. Some have tried their own machines with very bad haircuts. Some have got barbers with fully dressed like medical doctors for a haircut. The barber shops are closed and they're, they have no business now. So, well, he was telling that something very unseen, a macro nanostructure called a virus, some DNA, RNA mix. This has paralyzed the whole mankind, the whole, economy in the world. And so he was trying to link the COVID haircut to the type of impact and the distribution of benefits and costs in the society. But for us, the subject, post-COVID-19, it is not yet post-COVID actually. And Government of India's stance and policy for the RE sector, India always has been a very big player in the global, arena. And out of 88 signatory countries and 66 members, India is our host country. We do take a number of best practices from India to other member countries. So how India responds to this crisis, can be looked at actually in a matrix. The matrix in one axis, I think we can put land, labor, capital, and technology. In the RE sector, during COVID crisis, how do you handle the challenge of land? Do projects get land? If the land acquisition process gets delayed? And then we talk about capital. Capital is actually very stressed. The way you find, whether it is the exchange rate or the interest rate or the amount of capital in the market, the demand for capital, the supply, it throws up a very weird market. And the pandemic is affecting in all fronts. It requires, India, of course, is becoming an example how they have reacted or responded, not only to the health crisis, but also its impact in other areas such as environment, economy, infrastructure, transport, for example, supply of food. So when you look at land, capital, and labor, of course, is most affected. As you look at the way the provinces have acted, the way the civil society has got involved, the way families have responded. This shows some resilience in the Indian society, which is very rare. And the technology, it is not only the technology of the vaccine we are talking about to respond. We are also talking about, how the solar market is going to behave in the near future, so far as technology is concerned. It's a matter of concern that, already they're talking about the global growth of solar from 143 gigawatt is estimated earlier, is coming down to 108 gigawatts. And that is a substantial fall. And in a time when you're talking about 1 billion people without energy access in the world who are waiting for solar technologies to come, and some 2 billion women, still using, organic manure for cooking. In a divided world like this crisis is certainly going to have a lot of impact, not only on major economies or major players, but also on the sections of the society who World Bank estimates saying that whatever we do by 2030, still 750 million people will be left without light, without access to energy. And is that number going to be more now? And if it's going to be more, how, of course, India has created history by putting some 26 million connections within a span of 18 months. It's a record in human history. But how does ISA, our challenge has been, how do we take best practices from India to our member countries? Even including, the LED revolution, where India bought some 320 LED bulbs. And as a result, the prices crashed for each bulb from 400 rupees to 50 rupees. And this is only one of the things. Not only that, we also take best practices we bring from, say, Bangladesh. For example, water pumps. They don't give it to the farmer in all cases. They give it to a women entrepreneur who, in turn, after managing the pump, looking after the O&M, they sell water to the adjoining farmers. It's called a women entrepreneur of managing a solar pump, and that created a whole lot of employment in the society. So COVID has given us a chance actually to look into how we can expand our programs, take best practices more so that we can more quickly engage employment. We can create employment. We can address the issues of climate change. We can solarize, all those 50 million diesel pumps in the world. And recently, in fact, 3 days back, the Honorable President of the ISA, the Prime Minister, Mr. R.K. Singh, in the presence of France and other countries, we launched something called ISA Cares. Now, what exactly it means is that for the LDC countries and for the SEEDS countries, we are going to identify at least one hospital in each district, and we are going to raise funds to solarize them. And the second thing that we did was to issue an advisory to the global manufacturers of ventilators, saying that, well, you give those sophisticated machines, but if it goes to a suburban or a rural dispensary or a hospital where it doesn't have reliable supply of electricity, please provide a solar kit, a 24/7 source of that. These are the small things, we have been responding, but I mean, in case you look at the history of pandemics, it has been really devastating. We're not sure when the lockdown conditions are going to be lifted world over. I mean, everywhere, everything has been shut down. And so we have to do more analysis to find out how we are going to address the major issues. And India has been in the lead in putting the amendments there, proposing far-reaching amendments to the law to address the issues in the energy sector, the challenges in the energy sector. But I'm sure, at somewhere the economy will bounce back. Somewhere things will come back because, I mean, we have been so resilient in our history, the mankind. So I don't think it is going to be a permanent impact. But yes, there will be some signs, but soon I'm sure we will go beyond it. Capital will flow again and life will be normal, although there will be an imprint of COVID, like the haircut, COVID haircut I told. And once again, thanks to the organizers for having given me this opportunity. I'm sorry I won't be able to continue. In fact, I came out of a meeting here. And thank you once again to all of you. And thank you, sir. It's such a pleasure to meet you, even in the net.
My pleasure, Upendra. Thank you. Thank you for
sir.
Participation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now, thanking Mr. Upendra Tripathi for his presentation and his view of what is the present situation and how we can get out of this. Now, do we have Mr. Jatindranath Swain? I am afraid he has not been able to join us. Yes.
Mr. Moti, he is expected to join in 15 minutes. He's in a meeting with Mr. R.K. Singh, the minister.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, may I now request Mr. Anil Srivastava, Principal Consultant and Mission Director of National Mission on Transformative Mobility, to kindly respond to some of the issues raised. Mainly, I think, there is one issue which has always been bothering this sector, namely the variability of solar energy and wind energy. And as a result, they call them infirm power sources or non-dispatchable sources, things like that. Can we quickly come up with some kind of a solution to this problem? Do we have the ability to have over the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, a viable storage capacity so that, we are able to support the growing addition of renewable energy sources to our portfolio? Can I request Mr. Anil Srivastava to kindly respond?
Thank you, sir. And good morning to all the panelists. And it's a privilege and a pleasure to be speaking here. And so happened that our building has been sealed, so I'm sitting from the comforts, or rather the discomforts of my home, to participate in this webinar. I would answer your question first, which you raised, but along with that, then I will come to as to what I would like to speak at this juncture about the renewable energy and what it should be from the perspective of the mobility.
Sure.
As far as you mentioned about the variability, sir, I very strongly feel that it is because of our scale and the size and probably not keeping pace with the technology that we are still thinking about the variability of the wind and solar energy. There is not an issue at all. And those who are in the forefront of the technology, and they know it also that this is not an issue at all. We were talking about the disruption which is going to take place in the energy and the mobility sectors in the world. And there are some prophecies and there are some forecasts by various US universities, Bloomberg, BNEF, Morgan Stanley, and all those organizations, for which Niti Aayog, we as a think tank, were also keeping pace and studying and having our own projections or prophecies, whatever you call it. And while we were talking about the disruption, and this disruption was in line, another major or rather the unforeseen and one of the biggest of the disruption took place in form of the COVID. But post-COVID scenario would be much more in favor of the renewable energy, new and renewable energy, and electric vehicles and the transformative mobility. This is what is going to be as a post-COVID scenario. So I urge upon and I call the industry and the stakeholders to look at it from that perspective. Firstly, the overall viewpoint and the way now the renewable energy and the cleaner source of mobility that have been started being looked into by the people is going to change. People are realizing the importance of the cleaner environment, the cleaner water, the cleaner ambience, and all that which has taken place because of the lockdown which we have faced for so many days. So this is what is very much in the writing on the wall. Now let's see as to what the disruption was anticipated and expected to be, and what it should be from the renewable energy perspective. Yes, we have a target of 175 gigawatt hour of the solar energy generation by in another 18 months of time, and which to my understanding we are most likely to achieve. Secondly, the Prime Minister did speak about 450 gigawatt hour of the renewable figure, which he spoke in one of his UN addresses, maybe about a year back, less than a year back. So that also clearly demonstrates leadership's commitment and the vision what we have. So we can't ignore that. Secondly, we all claim, and as our Mr. Patil was speaking, that we have energized, we have provided connection to so many villages, so many houses, and all that thing. But sir, you have been in the administrative service. We have seen the realities at the grassroots, and we also do have contact with the realities which are prevailing in the villages and all. We have not been, in spite of being a power surplus country or claiming to be a power surplus country, we have not been able to provide 24/7 reliable power supply even to the bigger towns and even to some of the district headquarters of the country. So these are the realities, sir, and in this reality, it is very essential that the grid infrastructure or the grid connectivity becomes redundant as soon as possible. The grid connectivity should become redundant, and that is possible only with the advent of the renewable energy. We have to generate the energy at a place, we have to store it there, and then we have to consume it there, whether it is for the mobility purpose or whether it is for the any other purpose. And that is what is going to happen, come what may, and come what our stakeholders do. There are a sufficient number of investors who are investing in it. There are startups who are working on it. And there are brilliant people in the country, those who are going to move forward with that. We will keep on thinking about as to how to provide electricity, how to provide power and all that. But this revolution, this disruption is going to take place. And I firmly believe that this takes place as quickly as possible. And that is very much in the interest of the country. Now, sir, how is it going to happen? There are so many technologies which are there for the battery storage. Lithium ion is currently the most popular thing. A lot of research is going on about the lithium ion. A lot of research is going on the fuel technologies, the hydrogen fuel, and then there are other chemistries which have been also been tried. There are There are people who have come out with the aluminum, which is just with the air or with the water generates the energy. There are works which are going on in the iron based cells. So yes, of course, in India, we are much behind in terms of the investment in the lithium ion investment and the lithium ion cell manufacturing. But I'm very sure that the way things are moving, and now that if the government moves in the desired direction, this will also be taking place. The crude prices were slated to be coming down, and it was projected that by 2030, the crude prices would be, I mean, whatever figure I may quote, it is just a prophecy, but could be by $30 or something. But this COVID has played a game in which the crude prices, you all know as to what level they have come to. So with that, I think I'm overshooting my time. So this is all probably I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Srivastava. But one question to you.
Yeah.
You mentioned about many technologies which are likely to mature in the near future and would be available to sort out many of the energy poverty issues that we have in the country. Now, that's very reassuring. But what we are to go by today is the policy perspective of Government of India. You are in the Niti Aayog, and today's webinar is about the policy issues. Now, from what we know, as you yourself mentioned, the Prime Minister had mentioned a target, and the Central Electricity Authority has put out a plan that by 2030, we are going to have 300 gigawatts of solar, 140 gigawatts of wind energy, and even then, 50% of the total energy consumed in India will have to be generated using coal. So this appears to be this is the policy perspective that we have in mind when we talk to investors, regulators, state governments, etc. So keeping that in view, the real issue of variability and dispatchability of renewable energy, that is something which needs to be sorted out in the next 2 or 3 years. Like a state like Karnataka, where I am from, sometimes generates nearly 40% of the total power from renewable sources during daytime. And at night, they will have to depend upon coal. Now, these are the issues which are going to be faced by many, many other states as well. In that context, what is the policy that we have for getting proper storage capacity to sustain renewable energy addition in the coming years? Can you answer that question, please?
Yes, sir. It's a very, very, very thought-provoking question, and I could expect this kind of a question from you only, those who have the in-depth understanding of the sector. I'm really very, very happy to have been given this opportunity to answer this question. It's very relevant. Number one, sir, dispatchability is not an issue. I wouldn't consider it to be an issue in view of the local generation of the power or the local harnessing the resources, natural resources, whether solar, wind, or whatever it is. So that is of a little consequences, that issue. Yes, the proper storage, sir, there were a few tenders which were floated in which the storage cost of energy has been quoted less than probably at which the discoms are buying the energy.
Good.
So that is a fact which cannot ignore, and this was in the recent past, in a last few couple of months or maybe a few months time. We were all watching it at the Niti Aayog, and we were just seeing as to what is happening in that when the tenders were floated for the storage. So storage is good, and then the question of the policy in terms of the mix or energy mix, that is whether the coal or atomic or oil or whatever it is going to the mix. Yes, we have abundance of coal, and our coal is available, but the issue is, sir, that why not let the market...
You mentioned that you have storage cost built into the tenders. Is that going to be the policy regime in future? Is SECI going to be able to do this, that in future all tenders or most of the tenders will include the component of storage, so that the renewable energy sources like solar and wind become sustainable? That is the policy dimension people would like to know.
Sir, whatever I am saying, my personal
A very
opinion.
competitive tariff of 4 rupees 30 paisa has been realized for the 1200 megawatts tender
Yes, sir.
floated by SECI. That's a very good sign. I think we should push that forward. I will request somebody who is in this field in a position to compete for this kind of bids, Mr. Sai Baba Utukuri, to respond to this and say that how does he see this development?
Let me,
Yeah,
let me,
please.
let me just complete within a minute or less than a minute.
Please.
Now, whatever I have said here and whatever I am speaking is my personal opinion. It's not that the Niti Aayog or the government thinks in that direction. On a personal note, I would say that why do we talk about the policy regime so much? I mean, we as an Indians are used to talking about it unnecessarily. I don't know why. Very simple. Why not let the market forces decide it? We have abundance of coal. We are the largest country having the largest resources of the coal. But taking out the coal and just sending it to the power plant, the cost is to be seen. And then again, the generation cost, the capex in the power plants which is needed. The power plants are going to be redundant, and they should become redundant within the play of the market forces. It's not that you need a policy regime, or you should be needing, or the country or the stakeholders should be asking for the policy regime. Why do we talk about the policy regime? I am really surprised, but purely on a personal note, not on a government note.
Right.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, may I request Mr. Sai Baba Utukuri to kindly give his perspective on this issue?
Mr. Sai Baba, just a minute. I'll just play a short video highlighting Vikram Solar.
Yes.
Yes.
We have always been told progress and sustainability are mutually incompatible, that growth comes at a price, that the only way to make progress is to cause damage. We don't agree. The answer lies in plain sight. To meet our needs, everyone's needs, cleanly, sustainably, economically, all we need to do is harness its power. Our facilities are based in West Bengal, India, and conform to the most stringent international requirements, featuring state-of-the-art equipment from the US, Japan, and Europe, boasting 27-year linear performance and 12-year product warranties. Our products showcase our dedication, proudly surpassing industry standards, outclassing competitors' performance and reliability, and routinely exceeding customers' expectations. We are among the top performers of the DNV GL Module Reliability Scorecard 2017, and the first Indian module manufacturer to be featured in Bloomberg's New Energy Finance's Tier 1 list. With presence in 5 continents and 54% year-over-year growth, the future has never looked so bright. Gandhi once said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." We are working tirelessly to be that change. Join us.
Well, the future has never been so bright. Mr. Sai Baba, yes, please. Let's
Thank
hear
you. Thank you very much, sir. Distinguished panelists, Mr. Upendra Tripathi, Mr. Nath Swain, Mr. Anil Srivastava, Mr. Dilip Nigam, and Mr. Chandrima Sinha and Mr. Pranav Mehta, and the delegates. And in the first place, I'm very happy, and very pleased that you've given me this opportunity to speak in this forum, this great forum. First, to answer Mr. Srinivas Murthy's question, especially on the variability of solar and wind. Sir, I just wanted to add what Mr. Anil Srivastava said. Sir, I mean, in the first place, I completely agree with him. As policy intervention, policy is something it should be left to the market forces. I agree, and we should only enable the framework, okay, a policy framework to make market forces to really play its role. Sir, very interesting thing is two things are happening, trends are happening in the sector, sir. One is we want to promote wind, we want to promote solar, sir. If you see, solar generates power in the morning, wind generates power in the evening, sir. So actually there is about 5-6 hours or 7-8 hours is the gap only we need to bridge. Otherwise, more or less to the extent of about 70-80% of the power can be a consistent and constantly we can feed into the grid 24/7. If we can bridge this 7-8 hours gap using the storage, it is possible to give it as a 24/7 dispatch of power into the things. That is point number one. Point number two, you are saying about coal hybrid price. Recently, the storage price has been quoted at 4.30 rupees. Sir, if you see thermal power, without taking subsidies into account, on a standalone basis, it costs you not less than 3.75 rupee to 4.50 rupee, depending on where you want to transport the power, sir. Which part of the country you want to transport the power. Other than
new plants are even costing 5 rupees.
Even costing 5 rupees, sir. If you are able to give a dispatchable renewable energy power at 4.30 rupees, there's absolutely no harm. Why you shouldn't promote? Fundamentally, sir. And second thing, sir, I mean, today renewables are competing hands down with all conventional power, sir. There's no subsidy is being given. No subsidy at all is being given for renewables. If you take wind, solar, they're able to compete on the power, and they're quoting as low as 2.40 rupees, 2.50 rupees for solar, sir, and about 3 rupees, 2.83 rupees for wind. So there is absolutely no subsidies, no support, nothing is required. It has to be given a platform where it can be, and the technical integration of these sources have to happen by using some little bit of storage or whatever it is, sir. It is possible. So I completely agree with Mr. Srinivas Murthy what he said, and it should be left to but we should create a framework, sir. The only problem where we face as a manufacturers or whatever it is on the level playing field, sir. I mean, if you are able to be given a same level playing field, anybody and everybody can compete. It's for example, sir, I mean, the good amount of coal cess was generated. Some 60-70,000 crores of rupees money is generated. So that money has not been utilized into the renewables, sir. I mean, the whole purpose is to reduce the carbon footprint. So if it could have been properly utilized, probably that money could have been plowed back into this sector, and we could have actually really taken this to the higher level by storage. For example, the entire money can be used for storage and yet be competitive. So that's one thing, sir. I mean, which I wanted to bring to your attention. Coming to today's subject, what I'm supposed to talk about is what is the kind of a focus which is needed for domestic manufacturing, sir. In the first place, I would like to say good morning to everyone. Hope all of you are safe and taking good care of yourself and your loved ones in the current scenario of COVID. Sir, I mean, if you see, the global economy is absolutely witnessing very tough and volatile situation, by disruption, and supply chains are very badly affected, sir. Global manufacturing companies have already, what's happening is in the process, all the projects which are supposed to be built, they're all affected. And the global customers have started asking basic fundamental question, should we continue to depend on China? Because most of the product is coming from China, sir. And that's a basic fundamental question. And we believe, they would like to broad base their supplies to large number of countries so that, they're not susceptible to any kind of issues like COVID going forward in the future. Sir, if you see domestic market in India, is very, very solid, sir. We have been able to, last 10 years, we have spent and created a market which is about 8 to 10 gigawatt per year installations kind of a market, which is a huge market by any standard, third or fourth largest market in the world. And this has happened mainly because the sources of energy, as what I said, they are commercially viable compared to coal or nuclear based generation, sir. And as Mr. Srivastava also said, and also the the ministry and policy making bodies have said that 40% of the total installed power generation, they want to get it from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. I think probably this may happen much earlier than 2030, according to me, sir, because the way trends are going on. And as you are aware, 100 gigawatt of solar power projects we want to install by 2022, and we have already installed 35 gigawatt projects, sir. However, very important and interesting thing is, while we have been able to develop the market for solar, sir, and projects, and make the solar energy as an absolute competitive source of power compared to coal and other, even hydro, sir. But fundamentally, 85 to 90% of the equipment we are still importing, whether it is solar cells or modules. Purpose is, we are defeating the whole purpose, sir. I mean, we are losing, if you see, really, we are more or less buying the future energy requirements today, sir, by buying the equipment, if you really see. So it doesn't, in my view, it doesn't make any sustainable kind of a future for us, and it doesn't give us energy security, sir. We definitely need to manufacture these equipments in India. There are close to about 9 gigawatt of capacity which is available already, and for manufacturing modules, but this capacity is underutilized, sir, today. Indigenous manufacturers are having cost disadvantage compared to Chinese players. And so what do we need at this point in time? Need of the hour is, we need to have a comprehensive solar manufacturing policy, sir. Especially Mr. Srivastava's attention, I want to bring it to you. We definitely need to have a comprehensive manufacturing policy. We need an ecosystem that incentivizes the end-to-end manufacturing, the entire value chain, in order to promote and boost self-sustaining manufacturing industry. MNRA, which is the nodal ministry for solar manufacturing, has floated a draft solar manufacturing policy in December 2017, sir. But unfortunately, there is no development on this front. If that can be fastened, and if you can come out with a clear-cut manufacturing policy, it would be of great help. This will substantially save, sir. I mean, for example, if you are doing 10 gigawatt kind of a installation, we are talking about 10 gigawatt multiplied by even 3 crores, 30,000 crores. Out of that, close to about 60% is being imported, sir. 60-70% is being, about 20,000 crores is going into our neighboring country for buying the solar equipment, while we have got enough labor, our labor is much cheaper, and we have got capability of manufacturing. We have proven that in automobile industry, we are able to produce products much cheaper than global competitors, and that's why a lot of units are coming up here. We definitely need an ecosystem to build, and we definitely need a clear-cut manufacturing policy so that it helps us to sustain build a manufacturing base.
Thank you, Mr. Sai Baba. I think you have made that point very forcefully.
There are only 3-4 specific points I want to bring to your attention, if you could allow me.
Yes, please.
Quickly, sir. Sir, I mean, fundamentally, we need a level playing field. We don't need any support, sir. For example, our interest rate is about 10 to 11%, whereas what other countries in and around, China or whatever it is at about 5% to 6% they are giving. For manufacturing unit, interest cost is a very, very substantial cost. So 5% interest of subvention, if it can be given, like what is being done by Brazil, it would be of great help. And electricity cost is substantially higher, sir, almost double compared to China or Vietnam or Taiwan. We need to bring the electricity cost because of the cost subsidization and all that. The cost of electricity is very high. While we are producing power from solar plants at about 2 rupees 40 paisa and offering to the government at 240, we are buying power at 7-8 rupees, sir. It is so sad. And solar manufacturing we also need a little bit of capital subsidy so that for initial period, maybe 5-6 years, so that we are able to build the industry, sir. And like China is offering about 10%, 15% export incentive we need some kind of an export incentive so that we are able to compete with China, which has become a global solar factory, sir. And last and the final point, sir, I mean, the BCD is going to be introduced, Basic Customs Duty by the Government of India, which is very, very welcome, so that we can actually, get some kind of a protection for our manufacturing base here. But unfortunately, 2/3 and 50% of the manufacturing is happening in SEZ, sir. If the SEZs, if the BCD is introduced, BCD is applicable on all manufacturing which happens in SEZ, which will we will have to pay duty on whatever we are manufacturing within the country, unfortunately. So we need to have a level playing field between domestic tariff area units and SEZ, sir. So it should be at the same level, taxation level, so that we are not at a disadvantaged situation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity.
You have asked for a set of policies.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
To support the manufacturing sector.
Absolutely.
Now, before I call upon the MNRE representative to react to that, let me pose this question of what kind of policy regime is required for supporting the solar panels and manufacturing industry. Of course, wind already we have surplus capacity, as is well known, and how to make us self-sufficient and ensure our energy security. That's one. This is also what Mr. Upendra Tripathi was also mentioning, how to get the land required, the capital required for developing this industry. Now, may I call upon Mr. Pranav Mehta, Chairman of the National Solar Energy Federation of India and Vice Chairman of Asia PV Industries Association. I'm sure he would have something to add to this and some suggestions on how to help government come up with appropriate policies for the sector. Please, Mr. Mehta.
Thank you very much, sir. I call this situation as disruption in disruption. This COVID has put us disruption. Already disruption was going on in the field of energy with renewable energy rapidly marching forward globally and also in India. Therefore, I would like to divide my talk into two parts. Number one is how to restart post-COVID, and second, how to grow post-COVID. How to restart is quite a challenging task. As we know, industry consists of 3 M's, so to say: men, material, and money. So, how to mobilize men post-COVID is going to be important in terms of logistics. So, we'll have to make sure that logistics is taken care of for men. Also, as a side response, we have to grow local talent, skill development at local level. This is not a rocket science. So, it can be easily taught to people, and young people can easily be trained. And local employment generation is a very important thing. Similarly, we have to ensure logistics of materials, because many of the manufacturers and others for whom the material, let's say, is lying at the port. So from port to the manufacturing place, how to transport? We have to think immediately as we, post lockdown, whenever we ease. Same thing for money. For money, I think enough attention has been given by MNRE and also our Finance Ministry and Commerce Ministry that moratorium will be given, force majeure clause also will be there. So that I think is in place. There is no problem. But most important to my mind is how to grow post-COVID, which will require a sound policy, at least in 3 areas. Number one, as Mr. Sai Baba already mentioned, comprehensive manufacturing policy is required. And I was a die-hard opponent of all these anti-dumping and safeguard duty, etc. But my thinking has changed after this COVID. And apart from duty, main thing is a more positive step is to grow the manufacturing capacity with a proper strategy. I call it as satellite module manufacturing facilities. That means there could be centralized cell or wafer manufacturing, and then my neighboring district, in my district, I should have module manufacturing facility available. Again, I said that this is not a rocket science, and I would trust, ease of availability wise, and also distributed employment generation, distributed entrepreneurship generation, etc. Will be very much required. Interest subvention that Mr. Sai Baba mentioned, we have been pressing for it for the past more than 10 years, irrespective of COVID or anything, that when we are paying interest to the tune of 10 to 11%, the rest of the world and China especially is paying 3%. So if you do this alone, that will make our industry competitive. Also, similarly, export has to be encouraged, which is already one of the important Government of India decisions, which again we have been mentioning. And I have been mooting Renewable Energy Export Promotion Council of India on the lines of diamond and gems and jewelry, plastic, chemicals, etc. Because many of our members are already small, medium-sized members, are already exporting not only their modules in small quantity, but their EPC services. Indian EPC service is in demand. Indian O&M service is in demand, especially African countries, Middle East, etc., including USA. So that is something that we'll have to really have a robust export policy. And most important, I think, which is one area where we need improvement, is stakeholder consultation. Sometimes unilaterally policy is made, policy changes are made, which, well-meaning, very experienced people are available in the industry. And I think their input should properly be considered, and not just one-sided way of making policies. Because to my mind, framing policy is the most important part. We have a slogan that investment follows policy. If policy is sound, investment will go. Gujarat is, is one of the great examples for this. Equally important, framing policies alone is not sufficient. Implementing is important. We should not complicate issues. I many a times a little in a lighter vein say that we are national experts at complicating the most simplest of issues. This net metering, very simple. Out of 100 units I have generated, 50 I have consumed, 50 I have given to the, what subject to this, how much? So we have to simplify. So simplicity and flexibility is something that if we adopt, we'll move in a very smooth way. And especially these penalties, etc., it should not be so harsh. We are not here to collect penalties. There should be discipline, there should be something, but we should not be so harsh or coercive, especially under the present circumstances.
Thank you.
So simplicity and flexibility.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta, for once again emphasizing the importance of policy. And I'm tempted to call the MNRE representative to respond to some of these things. But before that, I think it would be wise to have inputs from Ms. Chandrima Sinha. Financial issues, quite a few have been raised here.
Yes.
The need for interest subsidy, the need for capital subsidy, and doubts about whether adequate amount of capital will get reasonable, affordable rates in the post-COVID situation when the atmosphere is not very optimistic. That's these are some of the issues which Ms. Sinha could throw some light upon. Now, may I request Ms. Chandrima Sinha to please give her perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy, and good afternoon to 2 minutes away from noon, but good afternoon to all the panelists and the audience. So just to briefly introduce to the distinguished panel and also the audience what Invest India does as in supporting the business community. We are essentially an arm of the government situated under the Ministry of Commerce, and we work with all the investors to facilitate their investments within the country. And so as all the panel has highlighted already that these are unprecedented times, and not just in India, but across the world, all the governments are trying to cope to ensure the business continuity and also to ensure the livelihoods of their citizens. So it's a balancing act between saving lives and livelihood. And with that in mind, the government has taken a spate of measures both at the center and also by the respective state governments to preserve the business continuity and also to ensure the critical services are provided. And with that in mind, Invest India launched a business immunity platform 40 days ago. In fact, today is 40 days of it, and I would welcome all our participants and the panel, the audience to also visit that. It is right now on our website, investindia.gov.in/VIP, where we have worked with all the businesses to ensure that the businesses have not been impacted by the lockdown that has happened. And we are in the middle of a 40-day lockdown, as we are all aware. And what we have been working with the government and the state governments is try to identify how we can now move to the unlocking of the economy, and how we can prioritize. And as we all know, there has been a significant disruption in even the labor in different states, and many of the manufacturing companies in this industry are possibly also affected by the shortage of not just capital but also the labor, and how to balance the requirements that this health crisis requires of us in terms of maintaining the proper distancing and the health protocols, and at the same time, in case it is allowed by a specific district authority, to how to unlock the manufacturing. So as a result, the number of queries, and we also had a WhatsApp service where people immediately could contact us, and we have solved more than 5,000 queries, and we are platform where the most important updates are provided has already received more than 1.5 million hits from not just from India but also our global partners, all the our chambers from different countries. And this is also being provided through our missions, our embassies, as a kind of letting the global investor community know that business in India is operational, it is continuing. It has acted as providing a boost of confidence to all our partners across the world. As some panelists have also highlighted, and I think Mr. Gutukari had mentioned that people have been asking whether they can continue to rely on the source. So this is let them know what is happening in India, how the governments are constantly in touch, understanding from the industry their immediate concerns and the steps they are taking forward. And so I would just like to let everybody know that the government has been working very proactively with the different chambers, with the different line ministries, with our partners at the industry level also, to identify what could be the possible step-by-step unlocking measures that can be undertaken. And as other panelists have also highlighted, that we might be having to relook at a entirely different kind of a supply chains lockdown continues. Because I think Mr. Mehta mentioned that we might need my subcomponent supplier to not to be too far away. And there is an opportunity also as different countries start to examine, shifting of their current supply chain globally, and to also ensure that diversification happens in their supply chain. So there is that opportunity that is there. But at the same time, we also have to see that how best we can take advantage of this scenario, given that we are still in the lockdown situation. And priorities based on the, we have, I think, a short term, a medium term, and a long term perspective to keep in mind in case the the lockdown continues. And as I think other panelists have also mentioned that MNRE has already been talking to the industry and also announced a number of measures to give confidence to the investors in terms of extending the due dates, and to announce that this would be considered as a unique situation. And we have been in touch, and I would also like to highlight that also our Commerce Minister has been in touch, and we have been working with the legal community as well. Many of our lawyers also have plans, and the business advisory consultants and industry to come out with a series of policy recommendations, and we would welcome any other policy recommendation that can be obtained from this industry, where we are looking at measures to improve liquidity, measures to ensure adequate capital provisioning is done even at the bank level, which RBI or SEBI may be able to take up. And also whether even there might be necessary changes required in the current insolvency policy regime that would provide comfort to companies which might face stress. Different measures would be required depending on the size of the manufacturing units. And with that in mind, we have been undertaking a lot of consultations, and policy recommendations are being formulated, which we would see announcements going forward. Plus, at the same time, the center has also sensitized the state governments that they also need to take a look at their state-specific needs. The states also have to now, if the lockdown continues within the areas which are not in the hotspot or the containment zones, whether manufacturing can be started, under what guidelines, and the state-specific incentives and policy measures would possibly be started. Some states have already announced, like Tamil Nadu, they had announced some manufacturing-related incentive schemes. And I think when we hear from our MNRE speaker, they would also highlight how the ministry is taking forward. And we are there to support in any way or form essentially whatever the policy recommendations are coming from the government and the implementation thereof, and any issues that the industry would like us to highlight to the policy makers. So we are acting as a conduit, and very briefly, this is what we have been doing. And I can tell you a lot of, in this last 40 days, we have seen that initial concerns that the business community had regarding business continuity, that has come down, because now more or less the systems are streamlined and people are aware of what is allowed and what are the passes required in terms of manufacturing. So now everybody is gearing up for that post-COVID restart of manufacturing and how best to support. So any recommendation, and I have noted down the suggestions from Mr. Utukuri and also Mr. Mehta, and we would be sharing it in our inputs to the policymakers.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sinha. As Mr. Mehta was saying, policy has to be made after due consultation. We are glad to hear that you have already taken note of Mr. Sai Baba and Mr. Mehta, both their suggestions about the need for interest subsidy, maybe even capital subsidy, maybe clusterization of manufacturing of some of these solar and wind energy equipments and things like that. Thank you very much. Now, the representative from MNRE, Mr. Dilip Nigam, has many questions to answer, I'm afraid, That's how we have kept him to the end. Mr. Dilip Nigam, please make your intervention and touch upon all the issues that have been raised by a number of panelists before, particularly Mr. Sai Baba, Mr. Mehta, and also, of course, my own, point about having storage facility promoted, whether this is going to be the future mode of doing all the tenders, storage come generation. Let's have some light on these issues. Please, Mr. Dilip Nigam, advisor, MNRE.
Mr. Murthy, Mr. Nigam has informed me that he'll join in 10 minutes.
Okay.
He's been called by the new secretary.
We have Mr. Swain now?
Not yet, I guess. He's also stuck up with the ministers' meeting. So both have told me that they're going to join back. So maybe we continue with some polls and some questions, and then they are going to join us in, say, 10 minutes.
Sure.
And we can take the discussions with them.
Ravi?
Yeah, we have a few poll questions to get the perspective of the audience, participants rather. So we have 30 seconds. Please choose any one of the 4 options for this question so that we get to know how you feel about these policy related key points. So you have this question: what according to you should receive maximum policy support? Local manufacturing, EPC and OEM service export, adding installed capacities, or all of them?
Before we take in questions, can I ask one question of either Mr. Sai Baba or Mr. Pranav Mehta? For example, Mr. Srivastava mentioned about the grid becoming irrelevant or redundant, or maybe only partly redundant after some time if we have distributed generation and locally, off-grid solutions to a number of the decentralized demand that we have of households and smaller industries, etc. Now, we don't seem to be seeing a lot of growth in rooftop and off-grid generation sector. How do we take this forward?
Sorry, this is the sorry, sir. Sorry, sir.
Yeah, I will take this question.
Mr. Sai Baba first, and then Mr. Mehta, please.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. Actually, I completely, it's a very, very good question. The right place for solar is to be on the roof, sir, not the centralized plant.
Yes.
Because it is, there is no other source of energy so conveniently available, so where you can put it on your roof and consume the power.
Right.
With a small battery, you can actually use it, sir. See, what happens is basically that I think DISCOM problem is one of the problems why this particular thing is not happening. What's happening is many of the states have come out with a net metering policy, sir. But when it is to be implemented, they're completely discouraging. The reason is very, very simple. Industries are their prime customers who actually pay them handsomely. Because of the cross subsidization or whatever it is, they give highest tariff rate. If they want to put up their manufacturing units, and go for net metering, they lose their prime customers. So they are discouraging, sir. Actually, discounts are not happy to lose their customers. That's one of the reasons. The second reason is, of course, storage costs. Industry. One of the reasons why industries are not happening. And also, of course, the infrastructure has to be built, sir. For example, there is a limited amount of net metering pumping power back into the grid is possible in certain areas where the transformer capacities may or may not be available. We need to really map it and do it in such a way that we are not not allowing net metering. That's another second point. Number 3, the concept itself is not known to many people, sir, unfortunately. If you see,
what about a company like Vikram Solar? Why are you not tapping this market of manufacturing systems which can feed a household's requirement of electricity, which will be very small, maybe 20 units, 30 units a day, that can be easily generated on the rooftop, and it will be a self-supporting kind of system. This kind of a market is not being tapped by many companies. What may be the policy support that is required to do
But
this.
like what Mr. Pranavata said, net metering has to be allowed across India, sir. That's fundamental question. So people should be able to produce power, whatever excess they are generating should be able to feed it into the grid and use it whenever they need. That's fundamental question.
Yeah.
That is not being encouraged as what I said. As far as Vikram is concerned, we are actually developing an excellent ecosystem, sir. In fact, we have got about 40 distributors all over the country. We are increasing that to about 400 distributors. And we are actually training installers. During this COVID period, we actually trained a lot of installers online, sir, actually, to increase the capacity.
I see. Good to hear that. Mr. Mehta, do you have any inputs on this question? Mr. Pranav Mehta?
I think you're muted, Mr. Pranav Mehta.
Oh, I see. I have not done anything.
I think it's there now. I think.
Yeah, Mr. Mehta, can you hear us? Brijesh, have you muted Mr. Mehta? Okay, we'll come back to that later on. In the meanwhile, do we have any questions?
Yes, sir. There are few people who have raised their question on the Q&A box. We have Mr. Gopal. Or we move to Mr. Praveen Kulkarni.
Is he going to ask the question online or?
Yes, sir. He will ask it online.
Yes, Mr. Kulkarni, can you please ask your question?
Yes, Mr. Praveen Kulkarni, you can ask the question to the panelists, please. Mr. Praveen Kulkarni.
Kindly unmute.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Praveen Kulkarni, you can ask the question to the panelists, please.
Namaskar, Mr. Srinivas Murthy.
Yes, please.
See, we know that the hybrid of solar PV and biomass gasifier, by using the same grid line in every taluka of India, it is going to solve most of the problems of, decentralized energy generation, day and night energy generation, and also inclusive growth by giving the jobs to the farmers and also buying the biomass from the farmers. So, for this purpose, when I was technical committee member to the Karnataka solar policy, I had suggested this, and government of Karnataka bought the idea of 20 megawatt per taluka.
Mm-hmm.
In that also, I had suggested 3 megawatt solar glass greenhouse to be hybrid by 1 megawatt gasifier. So government of Karnataka removed that solar glass greenhouse, but they allotted the projects for 8.4 rupees in 7 minutes. So what has happened in due course is this solar rooftop in everybody's house, it is consuming drinking water, which is treated by municipal corporation. And in Bangalore, we don't have groundwater. So if you promote rooftop projects on every residential houses, then discoms have to charge grid usage charge without fail. Otherwise, there will be challenges for the drinking water and also loss of discoms. When there is no government, then where is the question of country and the people? So in view of the above, we have signed MOUs with the state governments to create 50 to 200 jobs per taluka with 5 megawatt solar glass greenhouse to be hybrid with biomass gasifier. How Mr. Nigam is going to support us, because we have been doing, as a startup company, we have been doing follow-up with the MNRE for the past 2 years. And we can easily illustrate how India, after COVID or even before COVID, we can create 50 to 200 rural jobs for the landless farmers and also the children of farmers who are BSc agriculture graduates and solar professionals. I would like to, this needs a policy support.
I think, when we have Mr. Dilip Nigam from MNRE, I'll ask him to answer the issue relating to how they can support this kind of, hybrid solution of, I suppose with subsidy, capital subsidy or something between the biomass based generation and solar generation. But I'm afraid some of these experiments that we have had of biomass in Karnataka in particular have not been able to generate energy at very, very competitive rates. I recall a couple of instances in Tumkur where I was part of, the department which set up the project, in Tumkur, biomass based. They could not generate it at a competitive cost. Then Malavalli power, maybe you are already aware of this since you are knowledgeable about the sector here. But the question is, can we make the solar energy sustainable, dispatchable without having to plow in subsidies, as SECI seem to have managed to do through a tender at 4 rupees 30 paise for 1,200 megawatt generation with built-in storage. If that kind of a solution is going to be part of the policy in future, probably this will show us the way. Now, is there another question?
May I add to your this thing, biomass failure in Karnataka?
Yes.
See, you know very well that the biomass projects of 1 to 10 megawatts, 6 to 10 megawatts was just only subsidy sucking models and not the real benefit to the farmers. And even farmers also, they played a game by increasing the raw material biomass price in the next year, second year onwards. What I mentioned to you was hybriding 3 to 5 megawatt solar PV with only 1 megawatt biomass. 1 megawatt biomass gasifier requires hardly 8 to 10,000 of biomass, which is possible with only 150 acres of agro waste, which is easily possible around any project.
That's
and for information, Karnataka government did not support our project, but Uttar Pradesh government of Uttarakhand, they have given me solar tariff, but MNRE is not showing the interest because of its own internal problem. However, the state governments have shown the interest because the idea what we are moving forward is biomass buying activity should be something similar to sugarcane buying activity directly by the government. Therefore, the load on the discoms only for the fixed cost is nothing. So therefore, our proposal is very, very, very competitive, and 24/7 energy due to solar and biomass is easily possible. Kindly help us to ground our 2 MOUs, and Mr. Pranav Mehta is aware that 1 MOU in Gujarat is intentionally held up.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. I hope MNRE people are taking note of these concerns that you have expressed. Now, is Mr. Pranav Mehta back online?
Yes, I am there.
Yes. Can you please answer that question which I had raised earlier, please?
No, personally, I always find this as a very attractive proposition that solar and biomass hybrid will be something really to be welcome.
And decentralized rooftop generation.
Rooftop generation.
Yes, for households. Why is it that not many companies are not getting into this field, tapping this market for rooftop generation for households and smaller commercial establishments, etc., both in urban and rural areas?
You see, rooftop, Gujarat is leading, if you see. Rajasthan also similarly, because we had, as National Solar Federation, taken up awareness campaign hand in hand with the government. Because to my mind, awareness with capital letters is the most important part. People want to do solar, but people do not know how to do it. And that is where we help out through these seminars. And in Gujarat, particularly, so much so in Rajasthan, that earlier there were 60 players in rooftop. Then it increased to more than 100. Then it grew to 200. And today there are almost 400 players in rooftop. And they are amongst the smallest of people, from 1 crore turnover to about 200 crores turnover.
Excellent. I think, this is what
Uh,
we should look forward
uh,
to developing. Mr. Anil Srivastava.
Sorry, Mr. Murthy, we're just
Sir,
about to.
one sentence that we have given a proposal to MNRE, which is already under consideration. Pan India rooftop awareness program we will take up with MNRE and the state government concerned.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Murthy, we're just about to flash the results of the previous poll that we ran across.
Right.
Mr. Ravi, you would like to comment there?
Yeah. Please flash it.
Yes, please.
Yeah, this is very clear that the maximum number of participants have said the policy support for local manufacturing should be high. So 46% have chosen. Of course, all of them said that the policy should support local manufacturing, EPCOM, and adding installation capacity. In fact, adding installation capacity is not something which many people seem to be excited. They are all talking about local manufacturing and EPC and O&M support. Thank
We
you.
can take another poll.
Yeah, just one more question, please, before we pass on. Yeah, please flash quickly.
Yes. Here we go.
So the next one is, how should the RE state policies be? Whether it should be uniform across the states with minor variations, or states can have their own policies with no uniformity, or there should be only one policy nationwide. You have got 30 seconds, please, quickly.
Uh, 10 more seconds.
This is essentially to capture the participants' perspectives. So
Yes.
mostly they are aligned with all the.
Right. So we're closing this poll.
Yeah.
Yes, Ravi.
Okay, it's a unanimous thing. That is 57% of the participants say that there should be only one national policy. So uniform across the states. So one policy, and which is uniform across the policy. So it's an overwhelming vote. Thank you, and sorry, sir, for the interruption. You may kindly proceed. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, yes, Mr. Mehta, would you like to say anything more?
On this pole or on rooftop?
On rooftop itself.
Yeah, on rooftop, as I have said, we want to replicate the good case where we had carried out awareness campaigns with the state government, the state nodal agency, as also the district collector, municipal commissioner, and even the the Rotary Club,
Right.
women's wing, and things like that. That is the stakeholders.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mehta. Now, I have to go back to Mr. Anil Srivastava of Niti Aayog. Mr. Srivastava, hello.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Now, you see, many people have asked for more and more policy support. The manufacturers of solar equipment say they need interest rate subsidy, they need a capital subsidy if possible, and many other things to facilitate local manufacturing of solar panels and other elements required for that. Then there is also the issue relating to the propagation of this rooftop based energy generation for small users like households, commercial establishments, etc. The third point is about how to further promote, industry in this case, development of renewable energy sources by giving them a proper financial regime, talking to the Reserve Bank of India or SEBI to see that they are able to float bonds required to raise the required funding so that they can continue to develop on a faster pace in future the development of renewable energy sources. Now, these are all things which would require some policy push. However much we may wish that policies may not be required, but market should take care of itself. And I must say, it is very progressive policies of Government of India which have driven the sector so far. In future also some amount of support may be required, but what is the future look like, and what does the future look like in terms of policy that could be advised to MNRE? Because MNRE representatives have not been able to join us, you may have to kind of visualize how the ministry could respond to these issues. Please.
Again, I won't be responding on behalf of the ministry as to what is going on there, but again, as a think tank and more in my personal capacity, I wouldn't say that, I never meant it that the policy support or the policy hand-holding is not required at all, but wherever there are market forces which should be playing their role, it should be there. And the direct fiscal assistance kind of a thing has not been very successful in the Indian context for various reasons. So, but on a personal level, I am a very strong believer in the dynamic taxation or the dynamic duty regimes, which should be helping the country to move forward in the desired direction of the localization of the domestic manufacturing, and all these things should be done as it is being done by some countries, and particularly our neighbors, bigger neighbor who does it like that. So we have to have very quick changes in the duty structures, in the taxation regimes, which we have not been able to do in a country. We frame a policy and then stick to it, or we frame a taxation or the duty thing and we stick to it for a very long time. And we should have quick evaluation, and we should have quick modifications in the taxation policies. Now, coming to your rooftop thing, let me tell you, the entire ecosystem is responsible for it being not that successful as this should have been. But yes, in Indian context, and particularly the kind of democratic setup that we have, we need to have a people's movement to make anything successful. The recent example is the Swachhata Andolan by the Prime Minister himself.
Exactly. Yes.
And the other campaigns, whether it is electrification or the family welfare, and likewise. So rooftop solar has to be taken up in a campaign mode where all the stakeholders have to be involved. And yes, there is needed some kind of a policy support or the policy background. In the background, policy support is needed to take it forward. We cannot keep on working with the inefficiencies of our discoms and the existing power generation and the distribution systems. We as a country, we have to realize that we cannot continue with those kind of working and those kind of, I use the very strong word inefficiencies. I really don't know whether I should have used that. Yes, so we have to move forward with that. The discoms and the state governments have to realize that in what direction and in how it should be taken up. Now it's very easy to, I was just seeing the survey results, it's very easy to say that the entire country should have one policy for this sector, but practically, all of us know, and all of you also know, that probably it's just not possible in a concurrent subject, which is controlled by the state governments also, and the kind of federal structure that we do have. But in the best of the situation, we have to come out with a solution which is in the larger interest and in the best interest of all the stakeholders and the country at large. Yes, the last thing is about the financial regime. I've already spoken about it. The taxation, subsidy, and the support which is required is also clubbed with it as to what kind of a financial regime there. Whatever my friend Chandrima has said about the financial thing and what the Invest India is doing, that is very relevant. Yes, but of course we have to be very quick and decision making and very quick in deciding things. That is something which is really called for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Srivastava. And I suppose we have come to the end of the webinar now. It is my pleasure now to thank the organizers of the webinar, Mr. Ravi Kumar and Mr. Brijesh Nair, and also the very distinguished and insightful participants, Mr. Upendra Tripathi, Mr. Anil Srivastava, Mr. Sai Baba Vatukuri, Mr. Pranav Mehta, and Ms. Chandrima Sinha. And of course, we missed both Mr. Swain and another representative of MNRE, Mr. Dilip Nigam. But anyway, it has been a pleasure participating in this webinar. I would like to thank each and every one of you once again. Thank you very much. All the best for the COVID-19 lockout situation. All the best for the future. Good luck.
But before, sir, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the other distinguished speaker. But before we end, actually, we have Mr. Frank Hogwitz, who is the Global Conference Manager, who would say a few words about this webinar and also about the global situation.
Sure.
As a concluding remark. Mr. Frank Hogwitz.
Yes, thank you. Ravi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay.
Please. Yeah.
And can you see me as well? Because I don't see myself.
Welcome,
okay.
Frank.
Well, it doesn't matter. Okay. So first of all, thank you to all the panelists and the participants, of course, the organizer here for organizing this post-COVID-19 Government of India stand and policy for the renewable energy sector webinar. First of all, thank you to our keynote speaker, Mr. Tripathi, of course, and all the panelists. Thank you as well to Bikram Solar, which helped us to powering this webinar. And special thanks to Mr. Pranav Mehta. He is the chairman of the National Solar Energy Federation of India and co-organizer of this webinar, a long-term dear colleague of myself. True, the COVID-19 is unprecedented. And so far, no end in sight. Yeah, certainly sooner or later there will be light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully sooner than later. And as it was mentioned earlier, life will be different. Life will be not as normal as we used to be it. And as of today, the greatest benefit or the benefactor of the COVID-19 is actually Mother Earth. I mean, if you're looking at how good the air is now, from what I was told from my colleagues based in Delhi, for instance, yeah, the air pollution has went down dramatically and across the country. Myself, usually, actually, I'm used to be based in Beijing. We too had pretty bad air quality on and off, and has improved over the last couple of years. But now with the immediate impact of the COVID-19, yeah, so that's one concern I actually have. Once we are somehow more or less back to normal and we were going to kickstart the economy, are we going to back to the old polluting style again? This is the worry I have. Yeah. So once we're going to kickstart the economy, let's focus more on renewables. Let's do more. Yeah. In order to enjoy what we have in terms of great nature around us. Well, last but not least, stay safe, stay healthy. Yeah. Remain optimistic and forward-looking, yeah, and we all will prevail. And I'm looking forward to see and meet some of you, hopefully during the Intersolar India or the Smarter India in mid-December in Mumbai. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank, and all the participants, our moderator, Mr. Srinivas Murthy. Thank you all for sparing your time. Thanks again. Thanks all the party. I would like to thank all the participants for your active participation and answering all the poll questions. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you very much.
Thank you
Have a
all.
nice day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.